You mentioned to me that there's a player in the draft that you could see a path where this guy falls to the 49ers and the Niners reap the benefit of that. Who is the player?
It's Will Campbell, offensive tackle. And let's get into this. So the reason why we all want defensive line, right? But I don't want them to force it. And at 11, if a few defensive linemen go off the board in the top 10, I do think then they'd be forcing it just to force it instead of taking the best player available. And with Will Campbell, he did play only left tackle at LSU, but 3 years of starting experience at LSU. Never missed a game due to injury, which we love to hear because we're so sick of injuries with the 49ers. And he also only allowed 1 sack over his last 30 starts with LSU. He's just fantastic. He also is very athletic, ran a sub-5 40-yard dash at 6'6", 319 pounds. Woo! Now, one thing going against him is a little bit of short arms, but I think this is maybe perfect for him to fall just a little bit. So it's under 33-inch arm length, which is kind of the threshold there that people want for their left tackles or right tackles. But it's 32 and 5/8 inch. So it's right below that. However, I do think if the 49ers got Will Campbell in the draft at 11th overall, he could start in the NFL playing left guard next to Trent Williams, and then he takes over left tackle once Trent Williams retires. But that would be huge for the 49ers this year to fill that left guard spot with an elite prospect. All of a sudden, you're feeling really good about that left side of the line. Hopefully, Campbell and Pooney could help Jake Brendel not be so bad, right? And then you're feeling much better. But the reason why I think Will Campbell can fall there is that you look at all these options that could go top 10. And you could have 2 quarterbacks in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders go off. You could have, Travis Hunter is going to go top 10. Abdul Carter is going to go top 10. Ashton Jetty is going to go top 10. Mason Graham, very unlikely he falls out of that. That's already 6. Now, some other options, Tyler Warren, Jalen Walker, the edge out of Georgia, could go. Teteroa McMillan is the top wide receiver if Travis Hunter is not counted as a wide receiver. He's very much a strong possibility to go. That's 9 guys right there. We just need a 10th guy. That could be the top corner off the board outside of Travis Hunter and Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. That could be an edge rusher and Shamar Stewart if someone's in love with his athleticism. That could be a different tackle. Like maybe Will Campbell's not the number 1 tackle on someone's board because of the arm length concerns maybe. And they go with Armand Membu or Calvin Banks Jr., like there is I do think a realistic possibility that Will Campbell could drop to 11.
And you mentioned the arm length thing and how that's sort of the knock on him. I loved his answer when he was asked about the arm length. I'll play it for you.
You as a prospect.
For 2 years, nobody had any measurements on me and nobody said anything about my play. So now all of a sudden, an arm length decides if I'm a good player or not. I think it's BS. But, any decision makers in the NFL, they don't really care. It's all, people who don't coach, and they don't coach for a reason.
Bam. What? I love that. Like, dude, he's right. If no one measured my arms, nobody cared. Now all of a sudden you found out they're short. It doesn't change how he played on the field. I like that answer. I like the personality. I like the attitude.
Yeah, me too. And now, I'm not saying I expect him to fall to 11. There's a lot of prospects that are top 10 or that have the possibility to go top 10. And that's all the 49ers need. Now, maybe they even move up a couple spots for Will Campbell. I don't know if I would want them to do that for an offensive lineman because of how many needs they have. And they really need to fill up that defensive line. But I do think if you're sitting there and 4 defensive lineman prospects go off the board and you have the top offensive tackle prospect, who's a really good prospect, by the way, it's not just like, well, this class is bad, so that's why, he's number 1 and he's still there. Like that would be a steal. And I think there would be a no question Will Campbell's the pick.
Tennessee at 1 is going Cam Ward. Cleveland at number 2 is I think they're going to go Travis Hunter. I don't think they're going to go Shedeur Sanders. I think Hunter's going to go number 2. Who's the edge? Why am I suddenly...
Abdul Carter.
He just tweeted out a picture of Lawrence Taylor and said, once a giant, always a giant.
Okay.
If he goes 3, A lot of people have Campbell to the Patriots at 4. That seems to be the first kind of likely landing spot for him. But they need everything in New England. They need receivers, they need everything. So I don't know that you could just necessarily lock in an offensive lineman for the Patriots at 4.
No, I think if Travis Hunter's sitting there at number 4, I feel like that makes too much sense for them. And again, the Patriots are the biggest worry here, that they could go tackle for sure. But at the same time, maybe they like one of the other top tackle prospects better.
Right. Armin Membu is a possibility, like you said, that you mentioned. Genty, they're going to need Genty to go in this top 10.
Genty's going top 10. He's either going to the Raiders, and I don't think he makes it past the Bears.
See, Pete Carroll loves his running backs, right? Like, I could easily see him going Genty if
he makes it to 10. I do not see how Ben Johnson does not jump at the opportunity to get his running back.
The thing with Chicago too is like they already went crazy all out offensive line in free agency. So maybe they could still go offensive line again. But those were like the core things I think Ben Johnson believes in, right? Load up your offensive line and then attack with multiple running backs. That's a pretty good spot for Genty if he goes there. The Saints are probably a quarterback team.
They're getting really heavily linked to Sanders here.
Sanders, if he's there, do they go Jackson Dart?
I don't think Dart has a possibility of top 10. I know you really want that to keep pushing down the guys, so I don't think.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for other teams to do crazy things.
I definitely could see Tyler Warren, though, going to the Jets or the Jaguars even. Like, that's a possibility. Maybe even the Saints. He's getting mocked there. So I do think that's a tight end off the board. Mason Graham likely going to go. I mean, if Mason Graham and Will Campbell were sitting there at 11, which I don't really see how that's a possibility that both are, but which one would you want to go with?
Oh, man, that's a very good question. What impacts the game more? Let's just assume they're both going to be really good, a really good tackle or a really good defensive tackle. I think I got to go defense, especially with this 49ers. Say what you want. I know you can criticize the offensive line and the handling of the offensive line. They've gone to the Super Bowl with an offensive line that you would say is not, the best in the league. But when they were at their best, they had defensive linemen up front that could flat out bring it. I think I would go with Mason Graham.
I would go Mason Graham as well, especially considering that Will Campbell would have to start his career at left guard with the 49ers, right? He's never played right tackle. I guess they could shoot him out there if he out-succeeded Colton McKivitz. It would just make more sense to start him at left guard, let him stay there until Trent Williams were to retire. So at that point, you still have Trent Williams. You don't desperately need a left tackle right now. You do desperately need a defensive tackle, and Mason Graham and Will Campbell are both at the top of their position as terms of prospects. So you got to go with the need there.
I will say this. I wouldn't just assume that Trent Williams is going to play this year. And I take everybody back. Remember before they got Trent Williams, John Lynch was at, hey, Joe Staley, there's some question. Is he going to come back? What's up with Joe Staley? What did John Lynch say? Oh, yep, I understand. He's ramping it up. He's practicing and he's, ready to go for this year. And then all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, the 49ers trade for Trent Williams and the news comes out that Joe Staley is retiring. And Joe Staley told me and Levin when he came on the show that they just flat out lied about that it was a flat out lie. They told him like, hey, don't announce anything because we don't want anybody to know, what our plans are. John Lynch was asked about Trent Williams. What did he say? Oh, yep, he's training up. He's ready to go. We're looking good with Trent. Maybe he's not. Maybe Trent Williams isn't coming back this year. And all of a sudden, left tackle becomes a huge need for the 49ers. And so maybe they do prioritize it ahead of the defensive line.
Well, that would be really, really unfortunate because then they still have a huge need at left guard and then still a huge need at defense tackle and edge. Like, how did they get themselves into this situation where they're so loaded just a couple years ago and now they have so many needs? It's the couple draft classes in a row that were just so atrocious that really, really killed them. And I think this is where we're starting to see that Trey Lance trade really start to hurt them. Kyle Shanahan got away with it for a while, right? Because he hit on the Brock Purdy to get that quarterback. So it's like, okay, well, it didn't end up hurting them that bad. But I think right now we're seeing how bad that trade actually is hurting them because those draft classes were so bad. Now, they could have actually hit on any players in those draft classes, even though they didn't have first round picks or second round picks, but those first round picks, hopefully they would have been better at actually hitting on one or two players.
And the second, third, fourth, and fifth round pick they gave up for Christian McCaffrey.
Now that was worth it, though.
Yes, but they still lost out on those picks, right? And so when you trade away a bunch of picks and the guys that you do pick largely stink, that's exactly how the roster erodes. Every team has years. Go pick a team. I don't care who it is. Even the Ravens, a team that's really good at drafting, the Eagles, every team has draft years where you look and you're like, damn, they really didn't get much of anything out of that year. The key is, can you separate those years? Can you avoid having two or more of those years in a row? If you can sort of sustain the roster a little bit, especially if you do good work in free agency. But if you don't, and you have multiple of those years in a row, it kills you. It absolutely crushes you. And that's why the 49ers have seen the roster get so much worse this quickly. And that's why last year's class was such a big boost, because they desperately needed that infusion of youth, and they have to keep it going this year.
Thank goodness last year's draft class looks pretty solid, right? Because if that wasn't happening and they didn't have Renardo Green and Dominic Pooney and who am I missing here? Oh, Ricky Pearsall, obviously. And even like an Isaac Guerrero, like it would be looking and Malik Mustafa, like we don't know if any of these guys are going to be great in the NFL, but at least they showed promise that they can grow and be good here. If they didn't have that draft class, oh my goodness, this might be one of the worst rosters, like bottom 10 roster in the NFL.
Right. And we don't know if they're going to be great, but we know they don't suck. And that's more than they've gotten out of the draft recently. Ryan Jones says Trent Williams demanded a new contract last year to retire this year. Well, number one, he had no guaranteed money, I think, left in his deal last year. So he wanted guaranteed money. And don't forget, he missed a huge chunk of the season with another ankle injury. He has had recurring ankle injuries. He may just say, you know what? Do I really want to bust my ass to come back for a team that is not nearly as good as the one I was on? Like, he sees the roster departures. He sees what they have. He sees who they signed or didn't sign in free agency. If you're Trent Williams, are you dying to come back to the 49ers this year? I would completely understand if he was like, you know what? Stuff has changed. I'm out.
Yeah, but do you think about competitive spirit and how much they love this game, most of these athletes? Like, I'm thinking about if I had to retire, like I wouldn't really care all that much. Like, obviously you want to be a team that's great, but if you're not ready to retire, you're not ready to retire, right? It doesn't really matter if maybe you don't think your team is as good as it was a couple of years ago, but your brain has to be ready to retire before you do that.
And everything Trent has said is that he wants to come back. So I understand that, like, all indications are that he's going to come back and everything is fine. I'm just saying we've seen it in the past where the 49ers have lied specifically about this position. So we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening there. But I would be happy if Will Campbell fell. I mean, let me ask you this. If Trent retires, is left tackle a bigger need than defensive line?
I mean, yeah, I guess. Who would be their left tackle?
I don't know. Like, I literally don't know. I don't even know that I want to speculate about that. They would have to find somebody.
What would be very, very frustrating is if Trent Williams decided to retire after the draft. I think that would be like, and he's not going to decide to retire in the next 2 weeks. I don't think that's going to happen. So I fully expect him to be here this year. Hopefully he can stay healthy, wrap up those ankles like crazy. Like they just put him into bubbles, basically. I don't see him actually retiring because that would just be really rude, I think, to wait after the draft and then be like, I'm retiring.
Yeah, I don't think that he would. And I think the Niners would go to him and just be like, dude, if you're going to retire, that's fine. But like, we have to know now because we need to plan. And maybe it comes out again. I'm just saying, would you be stunned if all of a sudden the Niners draft a left tackle at 11 and then the next day you hear that Trent Williams is retiring?
Oh, now I'm going to be worried about that. Now, if they draft Will Campbell, I'm going to be holding my breath waiting for that news.
That's fair. It's absolutely fair.